Hi, I'm Matt, and welcome to Just in Time, a rapid fire roundup of current events in supply chain and beyond. With me again are members of the Anvyl team. Our CEO, Rodney. How are you doing today, Rodney?
Doing well, thank you. Excited to be
Excellent.
here.
And from our global operations team, we got Dan. How you doing?
Doing great.
And we got Will. How you doing?
What's up, Matt? Doing great.
Awesome. All right, let's get to it. Last week, Supply Chain Digital revisited the Suez Canal blockage and offered their three biggest takeaways from the event. Turning to you guys, what was your biggest takeaway from the canal blockage? Go to you, Will.
Yeah, Matt. I think the interesting thing that we've seen is really the amount of time that it has taken, for certain containers and certain products that were affected by it to, actually get to the destination of where they're going, and the ripple effect and delays that have been caused. I think, really when we're looking at it, there's a lot of groups that decided to err when they weren't getting caught up in it. And so there was that spike in air freight costs that people weren't attributing to, and that you've also now seen, the holiday period getting sped up as some of those residual delays are being worked out. And then, as the article's talking about nearshoring, we've seen that come up all through COVID. And I think that as people are continuously thinking about, hey, how can I bring my products more domestically? I think we're starting to see people, if they weren't there with COVID and they were thinking about it, this is another big point that you can say. It's like, hey, you're being affected by these really high rates that you're seeing across the ocean market.
Yeah, to build on that, I think there's a few things. It kind of highlights how manual and reactive supply chain still is to this day. You think this is a modern age of technology, but it's not true. People are still using Excel. They're still using spreadsheets. Companies still literally fax orders to suppliers to manufacture goods. So when you do that, you just don't know what's going to happen. And when something like that does happen, it makes that reactive nature even more so. And your hair just immediately goes on fire, and you're trying to put stuff out, but you can't do anything since you haven't done anything ahead of time. The second thing is, it makes me think about how much technology truly needs to adapt and be flexible to a brand and a company's entire supply chain, from that order all the way to delivery. And if they're not, you're continuing to have stuff like the Suez Canal impact your supply chain with being out of stock, and which will impact your revenue going forward since you can't sell your product. And that's even bigger for direct-to-consumer companies that are going multi-channel, from direct-to-consumer to retail. So it's a major pain, and it just highlights the need, I think, for more technology so you can be proactive.
Excellent, good stuff. All right, turning to our next item. The Wall Street Journal ran a report about how, for rail freight, Chicago has recently become a choke point in the post-pandemic environment. Faced with this issue, what would be some tactics you might consider to get through it, Rodney?
When this started happening, we were pulling data across Anvyl to really look at stuff. So I'll just go back to when COVID, initially with Chinese New Year, the lead times increased for manufacturing logistics 30 to 45 days, which is a substantial increase. China came back pretty quickly to open up everything. But then what happened is there was such a backlog. The entire last year, you saw lead times continue to increase because you had ports not reopening, you had the carriers not reopening, et cetera. What this does highlight, though, that is supply chain professionals got smart. They started moving, instead of shipping into LA or shipping into Newark, they're shipping into Chicago, which is, I think, a smart move. However, what you see is that Chicago's not ready to move everything out. So this backlog is just showing you what happened with COVID, and we're still experiencing that. I don't see this freeing up anytime soon. It's going to free up this year, especially right now. We're going into holiday, which clearly everyone's trying to ship everything aggressively and early. My only thing I would recommend is I would ship now, because you are going to have delays. And if you're going to ship now, and Chicago's an impact, look at secondary cities. Maybe look at the Northwest or the Southeast and see what the lead times are there in those locations. but this is going to be constant, and it's a chess match right now, because as soon as Chicago frees up and you think you have it covered in like Newark's going to be backlogged, and it's going to be just a lot of moving back and forth.
Yeah, I think Rodney's hitting on it there when you're talking about some of the secondary cities. I think, really two things to come out of this, as you see Chicago is a choke point now, and that one, who you're using as a logistics arm, and, what type of relationships do they have? Are they being proactive for you, or are you having to get in touch with them to get solutions? I think knowing what they can do to help you and say, this is what their opinion is and how you alleviate some of your issues is a big thing. And then on the secondary city, I think you have to be prepared, as Rodney said, to order early. If there's that time where you're going to have that meeting with a marketing executive to align on something, and their schedule's pushed or they're on vacation, like, you have to demand for those things to happen now. Because I think if you wait and you do things as traditionally you would do, you'll be behind the 8 ball along with a lot of other people. So what can you do to speed things up by 2 or 3 weeks to clear some of that jam that you wouldn't have anticipated earlier?
Yeah, we're working with someone who's actually shipped into Long Beach in May and is trying to get their goods to Detroit, and that goes through Chicago via rail, and can't even get a rail shipment booked, and that's gone over 8 weeks at this point. So Chicago being just central to everything, also central location, it's close to a lot of fulfillment centers as well, where you're ultimately getting your goods to, because cutting down the US in half there. So and moving to truck isn't this really the solution either, because there's massive delays in the trucking space. There's not availability. Rates are, if they're not an all-time high now, they're close to it. I think they've gone up. I think a leg's gone up over from LA to East Coast over $300 in the last week. So truck is not the solution. In a way, you're kind of just trapped in this until the demand lessens, because the supply is just not there right now for pretty much any mode of transportation in the intercontinental US.
Excellent points. I could see those choke points kind of moving on to like St. Louis and Memphis and Kansas City and other points kind of in the central part of the country for similar reasons. Okay, moving along to our last item. Last week, the Chain Analytics blog featured a write-up on micro fulfillment centers. It's a way for smaller brands to capture the economics of scale associated with their larger counterparts, larger fulfillment centers. Do these so-called MFCs, as they're known, live up to their promise? Dan, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think the important part there is you're going to most likely have lower throughput if you're in an MFC just by nature, but if you have a lower throughput, you're probably going to have a higher pick and pack or operational cost associated with it. So your cost there, it may not be as strong compared to a traditional 3PL or fulfillment center. But if you're cutting down geographically and knowing where you're looking, I would really want to study, like, what's the weight of your product? Ultimately, that's going to drive your overall COGS in that nature. Because usually where you're prioritizing. So zone pricing is hopefully not as important to you if you know the weight. Those are fixed, but also MFCs have a good value, especially in the holidays. If you have seasonal items and you know what demand's going to be, and you can automate the line. So say there's automation already built into those MFCs with like folding cart assemblies or ship box assemblies. Just use the norm. You can cut down your costs that way as well. But for any promotion or holiday items, there's real value in the MFC market.
Dan, let me build on something. I was just thinking, and I'm going to remove myself from being like, the supply chain, like person thinking about this, and I'll just be like a consumer. The Amazon effect is real here, and this is why I think this industry is going to be so big. Everyone's used to, like, you order something from Amazon, you get it overnight, which has shifted the game for everyone. So all these, companies, I don't even care if you're, Fortune 500, a direct to consumer early stage, your consumers and customers are looking for this like next day delivery. And I see this as a way to get it and get it at scale. So I guess the concerns are, Dan, like, kind of things around, hey, is this cost effective? It's going to impact my margins, because if you have a bunch of goods scattered everywhere, it's not as efficient of an economy as a scale. But I truly do not see this changing. I see this as going to be the new norm.
Yeah, isn't I think like GoPuff, for instance, I think they're kind of venturing into this with because you can get snacks and food delivery within a few hours, or Uber's going to start doing deliveries of roses soon. So like they're all of these companies are, I mean, they're turning into like these real estate companies, just getting that land and just having those micro fulfillment centers everywhere, just to move goods in that nodal radius of, I don't know, like 15-mile radius. You can get goods as fast as possible. And yeah, it's not going away anytime soon.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing will be is that, as an operator of one of the MFCs, like, will you be able to have seasonality in terms of people coming through? So, depending on what it is, will they be like 2 to 3 months someone would be in, and then you can expect another style of business to come in for that time period? I think of, those Halloween stores that you see, like they pop up in those buildings where it's almost like, hey, they're coming up. Similar, will the MFCs take that type of route where, you just expect certain type of businesses to come in because geographically they're worth it?
Yeah, I think the only true measure of scale for these MFCs is going to be automation. If it's a manual process, it's just not probably worthwhile for these businesses to be in. And same with the brands that want to be in these MFCs. Like it needs to be fully automated operation to be for that true value to be there.
Excellent, guys. Thanks so much. All right, that's all we have for today. I want to thank you to Rodney. I want to thank you, Dan. I want to thank you, Will, for sharing your expertise once again with us. And I want to thank anyone watching this. If you joined this, please be on the lookout for the next episode of Just in Time by Anvyl. Tell all your friends. And if you need to learn more about Anvyl, I think it's a good idea, visit anvyl.com. We'll see you next time. Thank you.